Good evening, good evening, good evening, everyone. Hi, hello, how are you? Have y'all had dinner? Hello, good evening, Seraphim, Gun, Robin, Ling, and Bobo. Welcome to the show. Hold on, why do I look very angry? Let me fix that real quick. Okay, is that better? Magandang gabi sa inyong lahat, mga minamahal. Naririto ulit ako upang maghatid ng isang gabing punong-puno ng kaalaman. Ako ang nag-iisang binibining bakunawa, tagapagyanig ng daigdig, siyang nagdadala ng daluyong, laho at bagyo, ang lumamon sa 6 na buwan, sanhi ng karimlan, mutya ng saligutgot at dayang ng sigulot. Binibining bakunawa. Hello.
Oh! Oh! It's the gamer girl routine, and I don't have a timer yet, Uwu. Okay, what's that? I don't understand. Oh, thank you for the subscription, Noble! Thank you! Okay, I think I need to mentally remember. I can't write down anything right now. Ooh. So I'll have to talk like this for, I don't even remember if it's 3 or 5 minutes. Ooh. But yeah, I guess I'll be talking like this for the next few minutes. That's okay, Mopo. You didn't have to. But thank you again. Ooh. How are you? Have y'all had dinner? What did you eat? I've had veggies for dinner. Ooh. I forgot what you call it. Oh, it's lumpiang sariwa. Ooh. Without the wrap. I just like mix it into the rice with, I don't know what sauce it is, but there was peanuts. Ooh. So for those who are new here and have never heard me in this voice, this is the Ubu Gamer Girl voice regime, Ubu. And if you're wondering, Billy, is this voice changer thing? No, this is just me, all me, Ubu. Does this actually hurt my throat? Yeah, definitely. So I can't really sustain this for an entire stream, so I just made it into a dream, Uwu. Yeah, Key, it's like I inhale helium, but I don't really need to do that. I can do this on my own, although it's not very comfortable because you've heard my actual voice. It's quite brown and big and heavy, Uwu. Is everyone having a crisis in the comment section? I mean the chat. I'm very confused because of this voice. I can't, all my sense of character just disappears when this voice happens. Hello? And it doesn't even fit the theme because I'm supposed to read a history book and it's supposed to be serious, but I can't be serious with this voice. Ooh. Yeah, me too, Seraphim. I miss my voice. Oh no. Yeah, and yes, I will just have to wait it out because I don't want to start reading like this. Yes, I call this the official Chibibi Pakunawa voice. Because, I'm a chibi right now. And yeah, it'll only last for a few minutes or I'll kill my vocal cords and I can't work anymore tomorrow. But yeah, this is definitely very annoying. Very annoying. And originally, I just do this to annoy Mino Minokawa, but some people decided to use this to bully me because they know I'm also suffering while I'm doing this. Yeah. Oh, just behind the scenes thingy, just between you and me. When I was just planning my character a year ago, actually more than a year ago, it's been a while, because it took me a very long time, more than a year, to actually start VTubing, but I already had the plan for my character and what my voice will be like for a very long time. So originally, I was thinking I'm gonna have 2 voices. So it's gonna be this voice and, a more reasonable voice.
Like this. Like the earlier voice. And then this voice. There's gonna be 2 personalities. Because for those of you who are not really familiar with my lore, the story is that I, the great Bakunawa, have been placed inside the body of a human being. And because of that, there was supposed to be 2 personalities before I just thought that, I can just do this, just one voice. But back then, the idea was this was going to be the voice of the Oracle, the Babaylan, very chill, relax. And the chipmunk voice that you heard earlier was supposed to be the chaotic Bakunawa because she's supposed to be young and wild. But I quickly figured out that if I have to stream for a long time with that voice, I will wreck my voice, and I can't have that, because first of all, I can't sing anymore if my vocal cords are like broken. And I also have a day job that relies on me talking and talking. The baby who ate a moon and the baby who ate a sunflower seed. Anyway, I'm also glad, just like you, Gun. I don't really like that voice. Oh, thank you for the follow. What's your name? The name is G Sarsi. Hello, good evening. Tonight we are going to read the 11th chapter of the book that we've been reading. Hello, Baxgon. The book is The Philippines, a Past Revisited, and we are already at part 3. Hold on, let me just move on to my other screen. There we go. So, in the last episode or session, we finished chapter 10, wherein we talked about the beginnings of the Katipunan. Hold on, Netizer, I found some intel in the past. He fought the moon goddess Halia. You see, Netizer, that is a bit of like a misunderstanding. I wasn't trying to fight her, but people have interpreted courtship that way. Anyway, we are going to talk about revolution and compromise, which is chapter 11. Are you all ready? Hold on, let me lower the volume of my background music just so that I can hear my voice, and the voice is screaming in my head. All right, let's begin. Revolution and compromise. The birth of the Katipunan on the day Rizal was banished to Dapitan aptly symbolized the passage of leadership from the hands of the assimilationist Ilustrados to the separatist lower middle class leaders of the people. The ties of its leaders to its reformist predecessor, the La Liga Filipina, caused the Katipunan to remain relatively inactive during the Liga's existence. Because, La Liga Filipina was like some civic organization. They're just like bros hanging out and helping each other. And among those bros, basically, there were richer bros and there were not so rich bros. So 4 days after La Liga was like exposed and Rizal got yoinked into prison in Dapitan, they sort of disbanded and there were 2 groups left. So the first group, the richer bros, they did richer bro things, which is, reformist. More like, we want to be still part of Spain. But the not so rich bros, those people were the ones who started Katipunan. They wanted a revolution, total freedom. Yeah? Hello, Rayakira. Let's continue. Bonifacio himself conscientiously performed organizational tasks for the Liga until its dissolution. It was as if he had been giving the reformist solution every chance to prove its worth. In 1894, however, Convinced that the only goal was separation and the only means revolution, Bonifacio activated the Katipunan. The drive for membership yielded adherence from the ranks of workers, peasants, soldiers, government employees, merchants, teachers, and priests. In short, almost every type of people from all walks of life. Richer bros getting on you. Well, you're not really wrong. I'm not really sure what's going on in the chat, if they're flirting, but good on you. I will continue reading. In a repressive colonial state, even the slightest link to a subversive organization like the Katipunan could mean imprisonment, torture, and even death for the suspected party. Keyword here, suspected. As much as just a tiny little suspicion, you can die. Nevertheless, recruitment began to gain momentum, a sign that the population was becoming ripe for revolutionary action. Mass sympathy and support is evident in the fact that Bonifacio was able to conduct meetings in Manila and its environs such as Montalban, Pasig, and Tondo under the very nose of the Spanish authorities. Many branches of the society were organized in this area. Now, let's go to the next part. Separatism proclaimed. Although the Katipunan included among its objectives some that were reminiscent of the Reformist Liga, because its leaders, the people who built it, were also form of La Liga Filipina. So, for example, mutual aid, defense of the poor and the oppressed, the struggle against religious fanaticism, and the moral uplift of its members. It was uncompromisingly separatist and believed in revolution to achieve this main goal. Both the means and the end were affirmed in an event that has been called the Cry of Montalban. Toward the middle of 1894, Bonifacio, Emilio Aguinaldo, not Aguinaldo, not that one, Emilio Jacinto, and the other leaders reconnoitered the mountains of San Mateo and Montalban in Rizal province for a possible base and hideout. There were many humble Filipinos that were initiated into the Katipunan as sons of the people, or mga anak ng bayan. In one of the caves, the revolutionaries vowed to take up arms, and on its wall inscribed the words, "Long live Philippine independence." Preparations for armed struggle proceeded apace with recruitment. Bonifacio advised Katipunan members to gather what arms they could get and also ordered that bolos be manufactured and distributed to the Katipuneros. Bolos would of course be no match for the Spaniards, Remingtons, and Mausers, so Bonifacio attempted to partially remedy the imbalance by asking two Katipuneros who were employed by the Spanish arsenal to steal some rifles and pistols. So yeah, that's why if you see a Bonifacio, what do you call that, statue, you would see him with a bolo, because that's the thing that they used back then. That's the thing that they can afford. But on the side, they were like, thieving from the Spanish arsenal. But the bulk of the revolutionary arms was eventually seized from the enemy. Okay, according to Teodoro M. Calao, let me just quote, the revolution was begun with no arms other than spears, bolos, and a few shotguns. But as the engagement between the revolutionists and the Guardia Civil and the Spanish soldiers became more frequent, the number of guns and ammunitions increased until the whole army of the revolution was well supplied. Calao's assessment is probably too sanguine. There is documentary evidence of insufficiency of weapons. In Cavite, for example, all men without rifles were ordered to provide themselves with bows and arrows, and arms were moved from one battlefront to another. So obviously, they were lacking in funds. War is an expensive date. Now let's go to propaganda and expansion. The propaganda aspect of the organization was handled by Emilio Jacinto, who edited to the Katipunan's newspaper Kalayaan. Its first issue, which appeared early in 1896, was very successful. 2,000 copies were printed. The issue contained an editorial purportedly penned by Marcelo H. del Pilar, but actually written by Jacinto, enjoining the people to strive for solidarity and independence. And if you have watched the last session here, you would know that this has Marcelo H. del Pilar's blessing, that he is letting Jacinto and the Katipunan write in his behalf, so that, you know, they would think that it's Marcelo H. del Pilar, and he's already been like kicked off the country for being like a pain in the Spanish people's ass. So yeah, basically, they were masquerading as Marcelo H. del Pilar to just, you know, throw them off the scent, so that the actual people who are writing, Emilio Jacinto, will not be, you know, unalived by our little colonizers. Okay, a patriotic poem by Bonifacio, Solidarity and Independence. So, Jacinto's manifesto urging revolution, and an article by Dr. Pio Valenzuela on friar and civil guard abuses. And yes, I do agree, wars are a waste of money, a waste of lives. Why can't they just, I don't know, do dance battles or debates, or I don't know, something that doesn't involve killing a lot of innocent people? But you know what do I know? I'm just a Bakunawa, and I have no credentials or whatsoever to participate in a war aside from my war against the last moon of this planet. But that aside, oh, thank you for following. It's me, Nonsense One. Yes, Merry Christmas. But you're a little bit too late. I've already had my Christmas caroling karaoke last month. Yes, I did it first. I came first before, what's his name? That old man. Jose Marichan. And recently, I just found out. Oh, I'm going off track here. I recently found out that Jose Marichan is a union buster. Like, he is against workers unionizing. So, because of that, I am more encouraged to actually steal his place in the hearts of the Filipino people. I will be the one that they think about whenever it's August, because, you know, September is his thing. But we are going to erase that. We don't support union busters. From now on, the sign of Christmas is when the Bakunawa starts to sing, alright? But also, I prefer Mariah Carey's music when it comes to early Christmas jams. Anyway, we are going to continue. Oh, darling, he is an old man. He's gonna croak soon. I'm immortal. If you look at my YouTube, you will find that I have already done my Christmas caroling early August. So, who's winning here? Jose Marichan, the Union Buster, or me, the prettiest Bakunawa alive? Alright, I'm just gonna continue here. So, The Katipunan quickly spread throughout the provinces of Luzon to Panay in the Visayas, and even as far as Mindanao. On the eve of revolution, estimates of the size of the organization varied from Dr. Valenzuela's guess of 20,000 to Sastron's estimate of 123,500. So the estimates were very vastly different. To T.H. Pardo de Tavera's count of 400,000. So, yeah, again, very different. 20,000, 400,000, who knows? But while enthusiasm for the struggle was high among the poor, because they are the most, the most stricken by all the things that the Spaniards have been doing, this was far from being so among the wealthy. The Katipunan tried to enlist the aid of a millionaire, his name is Don Francisco Rojas, for a contribution of 1,000 pesos, with which to purchase arms and ammunition. Rojas's reply was a threat to denounce the secret society to the government if any of its members bothered him again. Other prominent Filipinos were equally unreceptive. Antonio Luna, who would later become a celebrated revolutionary general, informed his superior at the municipal laboratory where he worked as a pharmacist that there were plans to rise up in arms. Angry and disappointed, Bonifacio and Jacinto decided to manufacture fictitious documents implicating a list of rich Filipinos as heavy contributors to the Katipunan. They were like, you know what, you won't help us? Fuck you then. We're going to say that you're helping us anyway. Good fucking luck with whatever the hell the friars and the Guardia Civiles will do to you. So, yeah, there was that whole debacle. Petty kings, I support that. These documents were discovered by the Spaniards as they were meant to be. When the revolution broke out, scores of prominent Filipinos were arrested. Why? Again, Bonifacio and Jacinto fucked them over because they didn't help the Katipunan. Good on them. Despite his protestations of innocence, Francisco Rojas was executed. Luna was among those imprisoned. It was impossible for the rapidly growing Katipunan to remain secret for so long. Impatient members met lightly in large numbers, thus arousing suspicion. Rumors about the existence of the secret society began to spread, because there are so many mariteses even back then. The friars were the most assiduous in reporting their suspicions. Curates from various parishes in Manila and nearby towns continued to report on rumored seditious activities and secret nocturnal gatherings of suspicious persons. But all these reports were treated as hearsay by the Governor General, who was not too well disposed toward his friar compatriots because, again, although they were all Spanish, they weren't exactly best of friends. They hated each other because they have conflicting interests, which is the friars want money and power on their own, and there's the Governor General who thinks the power should be his, right? So there's that. Okay, the die is cast. Hold on. Alright, it was not until August 19, 1896 that the Spanish authorities became convinced of the existence of the Katipunan. Like before then, it was treated as hearsay, chismis. Teodoro Patino, a worker in the printing shop of the Diario de Manila, betrayed the Katipunan to Father Mariano Gil of Tondo, so he was a fucking snitch. Gil immediately searched the printing shop of the Diario de Manila and found incriminating evidence confirming Patino's revelations. Under grilling by the military, Patino revealed the names of his co-workers who were also Katipuneros. The betrayed Katipuneros were arrested and more evidence was found in their possessions. Hundreds were then arrested and thrown into jail on suspicion of being connected to the movement. Yes, you were right. This was the time when Spain was getting royally fucked in the ass. So Bonifacio and the other leaders of the Katipunan fled to Balintawak, which is now a market. Although the betrayal of the Katipunan had caught its members not yet fully prepared to wage an armed struggle. Because, they were just like holding bolos and stolen arms. Bonifacio never wavered in his decision. He summoned Katipunan leaders to a mass meeting which was held in Pugadlawin. You know that place, you remember it? In the yard of a son of Melchora Aquino, or Tandang Sora, a woman who would live in revolutionary legend as the mother of Katipunan. The meeting was a stormy one. Some believed it was premature to start a revolution because, they were not ready monetarily. They didn't have arms to beat the Spanish. But after much discussion, the decisiveness of Bonifacio and Jacinto won the day. They were like, no, we're gonna do this. As a sign that they had broken all their ties with Spain and would fight for domination to the last. The Katipuneros tore their cedulas, certificates of citizenship. That's like basically the thing that proves that, you're a part of this whole colony thing. So they tore those to pieces and shouted, "Long live the Philippines!" This stirring beginning occurred in Pugadlawin on August 23. So this is known as the Cry of Pugadlawin, where they're like, punitin ang mga sedula, blah blah blah, mabuhay ang Pilipinas, mabuhay ang Katipunan, all that stuff. So yeah, now the revolt spread because it officially began. The first real encounter between the Spanish forces and the Katipunan took place in San Juan del Monte when Bonifacio and Jacinto led their men in an attack on the powder magazine in that town. The Katipuneros, who had initially outnumbered the Spanish soldiers, because remember, there wasn't a lot of Spanish soldiers back then. They were forced to withdraw when government reinforcements arrived. Despite this rather shaky beginning, the popular enthusiasm for the revolutionary cause was very high. Almost simultaneously, the people of Santa Mesa, Pandacan, Pateros, Taguig, San Pedro, Makati, Caloocan, Balik-Balik, and San Juan del Monte in Manila, and San Francisco de Malabon, Kawit, and Noveleta in Cavite, they all rose up in arms. When Bonifacio, Jacinto, and other leaders like Macario Sakay, Apolonio Samson, Faustino Guillermo, and General Lucino alias Payat set up camp in the hills near Marikina, San Mateo, and Montalban after the San Juan del Monte battle, new adherents to the revolutionary cause arrived daily to join them, so their number was growing. Their strength augmented, they attacked the Spanish troops in San Mateo. The Spaniards retreated, leaving the rebels in control of the town. But they successfully counterattacked a few days later. Bonifacio and his men then retreated to Balara. Reign of Terror. So on the day of the San Juan encounter, Governor General Ramon Blanco, now fully convinced of the gravity of the situation, because in the beginning they were treating it like it was just hearsay. There's always been like a little uprising here and there, but now they're convinced, oh, this is the real deal. He proclaimed the existence of a state of war in Manila, Bulacan, Pampanga, Nueva Ecija, Tarlac, Laguna, Cavite, and Batangas. The governor also authorized the organization of the Batallon de Leales Voluntarios de Manila, Under strong pressure from the frantic Spanish community in Manila, because they're getting scared. These people are banding up together. Blanco inaugurated a reign of terror in the belief that this would quell the nascent rebellion. Every day, people were arrested. Homes were searched and the property of suspected rebels confiscated. Suspects packed Fort Santiago. Many suffered unspeakable tortures. The luckier ones were banished to the Carolines or to Spanish Africa. Soon after its proclamation of a state of war, the government began a series of executions, unaliving. On September 4, 4 members of the Katipunan were executed at the Luneta. On September 12, maybe that's like its anniversary is on Monday. 13 were put to death in Cavite and are now remembered as Los 13 Mártires de Cavite, the 13 martyrs of Cavite. And again, on Monday, they are commemorating their deaths. Other executions were carried out in Pampanga, Bulacan, Nueva Ecija. The one most deeply felt by the Filipinos is one that we all know. It is the execution of Jose Rizal on the 30th of December 1896. It was a stupid, vengeful act, for Rizal was completely innocent of the charge of rebellion. True, the Katipuneros admired him for his intellectual achievements and had asked him to join them, but he had refused to participate in or even to lend his name to the revolutionary cause. In a statement from his Fort Santiago cell, because remember, all this time, Rizal has been basically in jail. He was out there in Dapitan and then Fort Santiago because of the whole La Liga thing, because they were thinking, oh, that's illegal, you can't do that. He was arrested 4 days after forming the La Liga Filipina. And then after the La Liga Filipina, that's when the revolution thing happened. But he was still being blamed for it. Silly. So he had vehemently repudiated the revolution, a reformist to the end. In fact, when arrested, he had been on his way to Cuba to use his medical skills in the service of Spain. Swelling forces of revolt. The reign of terror that began in September, far from discouraging the Filipinos, only swelled the forces of the revolution. Before the month of September ended, the whole of Cavite and most of Nueva Ecija and Bulacan had revolted. Batangas and Laguna also declared themselves for the revolution, as did the 2 Camarines provinces. In Nueva Ecija, 2,000 revolucionarios under Mariano Llanera, municipal captain of Cabiao, attacked the Spanish garrison in San Isidro on September 2. The assault was carried out in a flamboyant manner. Wearing red ribbons, the revolutionaries first paraded down the principal streets to the music of the Cabiao band. They were not hiding. They were like, we're here and we're very loud and proud, and we are going to bring this whole thing down. They were out there parading with their ribbons and loud music. Their leaders cut dashing figures on the horseback. Then, armed only with bolos and pointed sticks, the revolutionary soldiers attacked. The Filipinos held the town for 3 days, but were forced out after a furious battle against fresh Spanish troops. Bataan and Zambales also joined the revolution. In Hermosa, Bataan, the people killed the parish priest. Spanish troops dispatched to quell the revolt were confronted by 3,000 revolutionaries who had come from Hermosa and Dinalupihan in Bataan, and for some Pampanga towns to do battle. Pampanga and Morong were becoming restive. a conspiracy was discovered in Vigan, Ilocos Sur, which involved prominent citizens. The revolutionary ferment reached as far south as Puerto Princesa in Palawan, where Filipino soldiers serving in the Spanish army mutinied and assaulted their Spanish officers. Although many encounters were indecisive or ended in defeat for the Katipuneros, the Spanish forces were continually harassed and divided by the many simultaneous and spontaneous risings in different provinces. While not all the revolutionary actions were coordinated by the Katipunan, the revolution itself had become generalized. And you see, this is how the Katipunan's revolution is different from all the different uprisings. Because prior to this, all the uprisings were isolated, mini little uprisings made by people because of their own circumstances that they cannot take anymore. But when they saw the Katipunan that they are not alone, they all began to rise. And even if they didn't have direct connections to the Katipunan, these towns, these places were all joining the revolution. So it was a nationwide thing now. The plot begins. But within the part of the revolution under the direction of the Katipunan, there were clearly early indications that the rebels in Cavite under the command of Emilio Aguinaldo were thinking in terms of a new government and a new leadership. The Katipunan had two rival provincial councils in Cavite, the Magdiwang by Mariano Alvarez and Bonifacio's uncle-in-law, and the Magdalo, whose president was Baldomero Aguinaldo, Emilio Aguinaldo's cousin. Magdalo was nom de guerre, chosen by Emilio Aguinaldo when he was inducted by Bonifacio into the Katipunan. He chose it in honor of the patron saint of his town, Saint Mary Magdalene. And if you will remember the Oakwood Mutiny, the Magdalo group, they were named after, this Magdalo. So again, from Saint Magdalene, they got the name Magdalo, and from Emilio Aguinaldo's Magdalo, what do you call them? They were not terrorists, but basically they were army people who rebelled. And, you might remember one of them, Trillanes, as he later on became a senator. The fact that the council was named Magdalo shows that despite Baldomero's being president, it was Emilio who was its leading light. He was the one calling the shots. Both councils were very active in their respective areas. Both won victories against Spanish troops, thus making Cavite the most successful area for the revolution. Emilio Aguinaldo, mayor of Kawit, was then known as Kapitan Myong, not to be confused with our local Sigbin Myon. He is Myong, not Myon. He won a signal victory in Imus on September 5, 1896 against the forces of General Aguirre. From then on, he became General Myong, the hero of the Caviteños. And as you can tell from my voice, there is really a disdain in it when I say that. General Aguinaldo issued two decrees in October 31 and 1896, declaring the aim of the revolution to be the independence of the Philippines and urging all Filipinos to follow the example of civilized European and American nations in fighting for freedom. He called on to them to march under the flag of the revolution, whose watchwords are liberty, equality, and fraternity. If it's not obvious yet, I fucking hate this guy. Preemptive leadership. While these manifestos consisted for the most part of inspirational rhetoric, certain passage deserve scrutiny as possible indications of the thinking of Aguinaldo and his faction. Magdalo was only one of two provincial councils of the Katipunan in Cavite. Yet, the texts make no mention at all of the parent organization, although a K appears on the seal of the document, whose ideals and goals were the very ones Aguinaldo was urging on the people. Although Aguinaldo signed himself Magdalo, he was not confining his appeals to the Caviteños within the jurisdiction of the Magdalo Council, for he addressed both manifestos to all Filipino citizens. So he was like literally eyeing the whole entire archipelago. So, advance siya mag-isip. In one manifesto, he informed his countrymen of a fait accompli. We, the Magdalo Council, by implication, have established a provisional government in the town that has been pacified. This government, he declared, has a revolutionary committee whose task is to carry on the war until all the islands are freed. In the name of this revolutionary committee, Aguinaldo asked all Filipino citizens to take up arms and to recognize the new government of the revolution. They were like basically declaring themselves the new government. In the second manifesto of the same date, Aguinaldo, again addressing himself to the entire nation, announced that the Central Committee of the Revolution, composed of 6 members and a president, will be charged with the continuation of the war, will organize an army of 30,000 men with rifles and cannon for the defense of the pueblos, the provinces, which adhere to the new republican government, which will establish order while the revolution spreads through all the islands of the Philippines. The form of government will be like that of the United States of America, founded upon the most rigid principles of liberty, fraternity, and equality. So, hello, Mina. I'm just discussing the whole Magdalo deal in the revolution. Feel free to sit down. It's just me molding over Emilio Aguinaldo, this little bitch. On the basis of these documents, one is forced to the conclusion that Aguinaldo and the other leaders of Magdalo, flushed with victory, had decided this early to discard the original Katipunan organization and preempt the leadership of the revolution. They're basically hijacking it. Through these manifestos, Emilio Aguinaldo and the Magdalo Council were placing themselves at the directing center of the revolution. What in one paragraph is announced as a provisional government in the towns that have been pacified becomes further down the new revolutionary government, which the Filipino people are asked to recognize and to which other towns and provinces are asked to adhere. To organize a provisional government for the liberated towns of Cavite was within the jurisdiction of both the Magdalo and Magdiwang councils under the Katipunan because, their jurisdiction is literally just Cavite. And there was 2 of them, Magdalo and Magdiwang. But the Magdalo party were like, well, not party, but faction. They were like, we are the new revolutionary government. You should, recognize us, bro. Fucking mental. Anyway. Where were we? I think I lost where I am because of too much molding. So, in both manifestos, Aguinaldo appeals to the people that the name of a revolutionary committee, which appears to be the executive arm of the revolutionary government, but no identification of this committee is made. Magdalo had elected a government with Baldomero Aguinaldo as president and Emilio Aguinaldo as commander-in-chief. Was this the committee referred to? Magdiwang had a similar committee. Obviously, Aguinaldo's decree was also directed against the Magdiwang on the local level. Tejeros still 5 months away, would confirm the anti-Katipunan and anti-Bonifacio implications of the manifestos of October 31, 1896. This hijacking ungrateful bitch. So basically, Bonifacio was the one who did all the convincing of everyone, even though they were like poor, they can't really afford this war, but he was determined. But on the later part, when everyone was already following suit, here comes the Aguinaldos, grabbing the credit. There's a lot of credit grabbers even in the past. Hello, Miyaki. As the campaign of the Spanish government progressed, Bonifacio suffered defeat after defeat. Bonifacio was no military leader. His knowledge of military affairs was slight, because, he wasn't really a military leader before this. He was selling fans, trying to, make a living for his brothers and sisters. What he possessed, though, to an admirable degree, was stoutness of the heart and the singleness of purpose to fight for his country's liberty. This, however, did not prove enough in the face of an enemy with a superior military resource and preparation. Bonifacio's prestige suffered at a time when Aguinaldo and the Caviteño rebels were gaining renown in their area through their victories. The plot thickens. The victory exacerbated the rivalry between Magdiwang and Magdalo. Each one held sway over its own territory. They fought independently of one another. In certain instances, Aguinaldo's men did not come to the aid of the Magdiwang towns under attack, like total fucking bastards. Magdiwang men, for their part, did not help defend towns under Magdalo jurisdiction, returning the favor. When the new Spanish Governor General Camilo de Polavieja began concentrating his forces on Cavite, because these were like hot spots, because the Filipinos were winning left and right in Cavite. Camilo de Polavieja this rivalry between the two factions proved disastrous for the revolution, because they were not united in their cause. They were trying to one-up each other, basically. Military reverses led the Magdiwang leaders to invite Bonifacio to visit Cavite and intervene in the conflict. Bonifacio must have gone to Cavite that December, thinking that as the Katipunan Supremo, because all this time they thought that these two factions are still under the Katipunan, not knowing that they had their own plans to take over as the new government. So he went there, and he was thinking that his mediation would be respected, right? But instead, 2 incidents occurred upon his arrival, which were portents of further and more serious disagreements. Emilio Aguinaldo and his close friend Candido Tirona and Edelberto Evangelista, a Belgian-educated Filipino engineer, went to meet Bonifacio at Zapote. So, who do we have there? Emilio and his friends. And then we have Bonifacio. So they came away disgusted with what they regarded as Bonifacio's attitude of superiority. Aguinaldo recalled that the Supremo acted as if he were a king. Doubt, the Magdalo men kept their feelings to themselves. However, it is possible that the opinion of the Magdalo men was a result not so much of Bonifacio's behavior as of their own supercilious attitude towards a man they regarded as educationally and socially their inferior. Because remember, what was Bonifacio's educational background? He was not even able to finish high school, if I can remember correctly. He had to stop because his parents died, and he had to make a living for his brothers and sisters. So he was not as educated, not as rich as Aguinaldo. So, they were literally looking down at him educationally and socially. They think they're much higher than him. And when a man who has like self-respect is faced with them, they think he is acting as if he was a king, like very high and mighty. Hello, Rui! Hi, how are you? I missed you. Oh, before I forget, if you're still up to, the thing, I can't say it because it's a secret for now. But yeah, just message me whenever. Anyway, the second incident involved another Aguinaldo and another Tirona. Baldomero Aguinaldo, the other Aguinaldo who was supposed to be the president, and Daniel Tirona, accompanied by a certain Vicente Fernandez, also visited Bonifacio. Fernandez had been the very man who had failed to keep his promise to attack the Spaniards in Laguna and Morong simultaneously with Bonifacio's assault on San Juan del Monte. Bonifacio recognized him and ordered Fernandez's arrest, but the Magdalo leaders refused to surrender him. Like they didn't recognize his authority over them. He was the Supremo, but they were like, nope. Bonifacio realized then how little his influence counted with the Magdalo faction. Oh, don't worry. If you're busy, it's fine. It's chill. I think I might not be able to do the thing until, let's say, Monday, because something came up and I would not be able to do the thing this weekend, but after that I will surely do it. Okay. Now, the people were unaware of the personal animosities racking the leadership of their revolution. In Noveleta, the townspeople received Bonifacio enthusiastically. They loved him, shouting, "Long live the ruler of the Philippines!" To which Bonifacio replied, "Long live Philippine liberty." Can you see the difference between these two? Emilio Aguinaldo, fucking asshole. I hate him. Anyway, character assassination. Now, the people's acclamation evidently did not impress the Magdalo elite, nor deter them of their plans. The people were like basically saying that Bonifacio is the true leader of the Philippines because he was the leader of the Katipunan. And they're like, no, we're establishing our own government. According to General Artemio Ricarte, a few days after Bonifacio's arrival in Cavite, there were anonymous letters suddenly appearing all over the province, especially in San Francisco de Malabon, where Bonifacio was staying, urging the Caviteños to not idolize Bonifacio because the Katipunan head was a Mason, an atheist, and an uneducated man, a mere employee of a German firm. So they're basically saying everything to discredit him. Bonifacio, suspecting Daniel Tirona to be the author, confronted the latter and demanded satisfaction. Tirona refused in a manner so arrogant that Bonifacio, greatly angered, drew his gun and might have shot Tirona then and there, had not some women intervened. He was about to pop a cap on Tirona's ass, literally. Hello, Yomi! Hi, welcome. We are reading The Philippines, a past revisited, and we're now talking about the petty squabbles of the people in the Katipunan fighting over the leadership. Yes, dear Miss Dart, it's allegedly. It's might have. We're not sure. We're not there. Undermining the Katipunan. The Imus Assembly of December 31 was avowedly called for the purpose of determining once and for all the leadership of the province so as to resolve the rivalry between Magdiwang and Magdalo, which, in my opinion, is fucking bullshit. Because they're supposed to be under the Katipunan, and then there's suddenly rivalry between the two of them as if they're like the top dogs. So instead, the man who had been invited to mediate the conflict found his own position as leader of the revolution directly challenged. The assembly was asked to decide whether the Katipunan should continue leading the revolution or be replaced by a new revolutionary government. It was Baldomero Aguinaldo who proposed the establishment of a revolutionary government. The Magdalo leaders were all prepared. They promptly submitted a constitution for the proposed government. This has been prepared by Edilberto Evangelista. The assembly was divided. Yes, definitely, just men being men. No doubt about it. So, where were we? So they prepared a constitution, specifically Edilberto Evangelista, he's the one who made it, and the assembly was divided. For those who favored the continuation of the Katipunan they argued that it has its own constitution and bylaws. And I would say it's pretty neat because in their bylaws and constitutions, they loved and respected women. Like high regards, like drink your respect women juice daily. That's really, really cool. And that it still had to carry out its mission to achieve Philippine independence, because, that's the whole thing why they formed this. Moreover, the provincial and municipal governments in Manila and its environs had already been established in accordance with the Katipunan Constitution, because remember, all these other places, they rose up because of the Katipunan, and all these other people were being contacted directly by the Katipunan. They were the ones organizing this whole shebang. And then here comes these people from Cavite. Cavitismo. There were those who were against the Katipunan contended that it was merely a secret society which should have ceased to exist the moment the revolution emerged in the open. They also declared that Cavite, being small, it should not be divided between two groups. They apparently believed that the establishment of their proposed revolutionary government was a matter of consolidating two revolutionary governments in Cavite. This is another indication of the chauvinism that animated the temporarily victorious Caviteños. For them, it seemed the revolution was only in Cavite, and its leadership must therefore be Caviteño. The Imus assembly further deepened, and the rift between Bonifacio and Aguinaldo stained. There was no going back. For his part, though, Bonifacio showed partiality toward the Magdiwang. Aguinaldo, on the other hand, threatened Bonifacio directly by his active campaign to elect Edilberto Evangelista, the guy who created the constitution thingy, president of the revolutionary government. Should his group's proposal to establish such a government be approved, Aguinaldo's reason was that among all of them, Evangelista was the best educated. Again, slightly jabbing at Bonifacio, who didn't finish his studies. Which, then again, it's not his fault, right, that his parents died. Accounts vary as to how the Imus assembly ended. Some say that nothing was resolved except that the leaders presented agreed to meet again. Chodoro M. Calao says, at the conclusion of the assembly, Andres Bonifacio was given carte blanche for the designation of a number of persons who were to form with him a legislative body that was to draw up the basis for the organization. Okay. Now, Ricarte has the same version in his memoirs and adds that before the session closed, Bonifacio asked that the decision be put in writing. This was not done because of the arrival of Pasiano Rizal and Josephine Bracken, the widow of Dr. Jose Rizal. Because by this time, Dr. Jose Rizal has already been executed. Ricarte further reveals that in the succeeding days, Bonifacio repeatedly asked for the minutes so that he might have written authorization upon which to base his actions, but such minutes were not given to him. Historians have doubted Ricardo's version on the ground that the Magdiwang to whom Bonifacio was partial had taken charge of the meeting. However, Bonifacio did make passing mention of the absence of these minutes in a letter to Jacinto. Now comes the power struggle. Because then again, they're all but men. On March 22, 1897, the Magdiwang and the Magdalo councils met once more. This time, at the Friar Estate houses in Tejeros, a barrio of San Francisco de Malabon. This convention proved even stormier than the Imus meeting. And as in Imus, the declared objective of the meeting was not even discussed. According to Jacinto Lumbreras, a Magdiwang and the first presiding officer of the Tejeros Convention, the meeting had been called to adopt measures for the defense of Cavite. Again, this subject was not discussed, and instead, the assembled leaders, including the Magdiwangs, decided to elect the officers of the revolutionary government thingy. So they were just not doing what they're supposed to do, thus unceremoniously discarding the Supreme Council of the Katipunan, under whose standard the people had been fighting and would continue to fight. Exactly, God. They were just trying to one up one another, trying to come up on top. Okay. So again, the subject was not discussed, and instead the assembled leaders, including the Magdiwas, decided to elect the officers of the revolutionary government, and that therefore discarded the Supreme Council of the Katipunan, when in fact it was the Katipunan who, set the standard for the people who had been fighting. And even after that, Bonifacio presided, though reluctantly, over the election. Beforehand, he secured the unanimous pledge of the assembly to abide by the majority decision. So here were the results. Hold on, let me just present to you the results of the election. As a president, we already know that Emilio Aguinaldo won, and vice president, still not Andres, it became Mariano Trias. Captain General, still not Bonifacio. Artemio Ricarte. Who the fuck are these people? Director of War. You would think it's Aguinaldo, but no, it's Emiliano. You would think it's Bonifacio, but no, it's Emiliano Riejo de Dios. And the Director of the Interior, whatever the fuck that means, was given to Bonifacio. But that's not even how it ends. Emilio Aguinaldo had been awarded the highest prize of the revolution on his own birth anniversary. It's like a birthday gift to himself. Although he was not present, being busy at a military front in Pasong Santon. Oh, thank you for following, Massel. We are just reading about, the petty squabbles of the leadership post, well, not post, but like in the middle of war. So where were we? As for Bonifacio, the death blow to the Katipunan and his election as a mere Director of the Interior showed clearly that he had been maneuvered out of power. It must have been a bitter pill to swallow, especially since even the Magdiwangs, who were supposed to be his supporters, did not vote for him, either for president or vice president. But another insult was yet to follow. Like I said, this is not their final form. Evidently, the Caviteño elite would not accept an uneducated man, how they saw Bonifacio, and a non-Caviteño at that, even for the minor post of Director of the Interior. Daniel Tirona protested Bonifacio's election, saying that the post should not be occupied by a person without a lawyer's diploma. He suggested a Caviteño lawyer, fucking Caviteños, Jose del Rosario, for the position. This was clearly an intended insult. It naturally infuriated Bonifacio, who thereupon hotly declared, I, as chairman of this assembly, as the president of the Supreme Council of the Katipunan, as all of you do not deny, declare this assembly dissolved, and I annul all that has been approved and resolved. He was like, nope, not fucking happening, not under my watch, fuck this shit, this is vetoed, all of this. Bonifacio outmaneuvered. In a letter to his friend Emilio Jacinto, Bonifacio made known his reluctance to hold the elections because of the absence of representatives from other districts. He also cited that Imus agreement, which authorized him to appoint a body that would formulate the basis for a reorganization, like a legislative body thingy that they were talking about earlier. In his view, even this preliminary step could not be taken because the absence of the minutes of the Imus convention rendered its acts of doubtful validity. Bonifacio admitted to Jacinto that despite his misgivings, he acceded to the election of officers because it was the will of the majority of those present. In the following passage from his letter, Bonifacio hints at plots and pressures in the campaign for Aguinaldo's election. Let me just read. Before the elections were held, I discovered the underhanded scheme of some of those from Imus who were quietly and secretly spreading the word that it was not good that they should be under the leadership of men from other towns. Because of this, Captain Emilio Aguinaldo was elected president. As soon as I heard about this, I said that this meeting was nothing more than a scheme of people with bad consciences, because that was all that they wanted, obviously referring to Aguinaldo's election. And they were deceiving the people, and I added that if they wished me to point out one by one those who comported themselves in this manner, I would do so. Those present said that this was no longer necessary. I also said that if the will of those present was not followed, I would not recognize those already elected, and if I would not recognize them, they would not be recognized by our people there. General Ricarte, who was elected general, also declared that the meeting was the result of evil machinations. The simple Bonifacio had been badly outmaneuvered. Although it was his duty to mediate quarrels within his organization, his going to Cavite may be termed a tactical error, especially at a time when he had been suffering military reverses, while the Caviteños had been winning victories. Bonifacio had few friends in Cavite. On the other hand, the victories of the Cavite rebels were bound to arouse strong feelings of regionalism and pride in their local champion, General Aguinaldo. But Bonifacio's biggest error lay in his failure to insist that representatives from other provinces be present to participate in such a crucial decision, because again, he went there thinking that he's just going to mediate between the Magdalo and Magdiwang, and then all of a sudden they were like deciding, oh, we're forming this new government thingy, let's have an election, and everyone was voting against him. So clearly it was a ruse. So his suspicions should have been aroused by the unexpected agitation for the formation of a central government to supersede the Katipunan. But he was too naive and trusting, and perhaps too secure in his preeminent position in the government or in the movement, to think that anyone would be planning to wrest the leadership from his hands. And hello, welcome. Thank you for following Chris1569. Yes, absolutely cursed, absolutely rigged. And it wasn't like a proper election anyway, It was just a bunch of men from Cavite who all wanted power. Those were the people who voted. Of course, they were gonna vote for someone from Cavite. And obviously, they had someone in mind already before this whole thing started. Ilustrado syndrome. The fundamental factor underlying the power play at Tejeros may be deducted from Tirona's attack on Bonifacio for the latter's lack of education. So they're basically just looking down on him all the fucking time. It pointed up the typical Ilustrado belief that leadership should be the exclusive prerogative of the educated, like some savior complex. Now that the revolution appeared to have good expectations of success, those with present or prospective interests to protect wanted its leadership securely in their hands. The birth of the Katipunan marked the passage of the leadership of the movement from the hands of the Ilustrados to a leadership based on the people, with Bonifacio. The elections at Tejeros symbolized the seizure of a provincial elite and the leadership of a mass movement that held prospects of success. As the revolution gained further ground, the Caviteños would find themselves yielding power and position to the Manila elite. Tejeros was the defeat of the revolution of the masses. It was the victory of a clique intent on taking advantage of the historic initiative of the people and the momentum the revolution had already acquired. Future events would demonstrate how the revolutionary forces of the people would be used as a bargaining lever by the elite for the protection of their own interests, their selfish wants. Sharing honors. So Aguinaldo took his oath of office the day after the Tejeros assembly because, they were so excited to do so before Bonifacio can do anything about it. The composition of his government are as follows. So you have Emilio Aguinaldo, him as president, Mariano Trias, his vice president, Artemio Ricarte, captain general, Emiliano Riego de Dios, director of war. We've already mentioned that earlier. But now the director of interior became Pascual Alvarez. We have director of state, Jacinto Lumbreras, director of finance, Baldomero Aguinaldo, the president of the whole Magdalo group from before, director of commerce, Mariano Alvarez, and director of justice, Severino de las Alas. With the exception of Ricarte, who hailed from Batac, Ilocos Norte. All of these men were Caviteños, born and bred. Ricarte himself was practically a Caviteño, being a permanent resident of the province. So it was like a family affair for the Caviteños here, no? Of greater significance was the fact that these men belonged to the elite of Cavite, the rich people. None of them were poor. They had taken college courses in such Manila schools such as San Juan de Letran, Ateneo, Santo Tomas, and San Jose. Ricarte and Marian Alvarez were school teachers. De las Alas was a lawyer. Some of them occupied official positions. So we already know that Emilio Aguinaldo was municipal mayor of Kawit in 1895, and his cousin, Baldomero, was justice of the peace of the same town. Mariano Alvarez had been a municipal captain and later justice of the peace of Noveleta. Aside from the Aguinaldos, who belonged to Magdalo, all the other elected officials were members of the Magdiwang Council. So, in the last analysis, the rivalry between Magdalo and Magdiwang leaders was resolved by booting out the non-Caviteño and sharing the honors among themselves. Like, on their own, they were going to fight. But if they think that they can have a bigger share of the pie, they were willing to work with each other. Between Imus and Tejeros, some changes seem to have occurred in the Magdiwang position. Whereas in Imus, the Magdiwang partisans were firmly for continuing the revolution under Katipunan direction and would agree to a revolutionary government only if Bonifacio were automatically made president with power to appoint the ministers. In Tejeros, it was a Magdiwang, Severino de las Alas, who opened the question as to the kind of government that should be set up. Subsequently, even the Magdiwangs voted in favor of establishing a new revolutionary government to supplant the Katipunan. So they turned their back on the Katipunan. The results of the election, in which the Magdiwangs got all the positions except the presidency and the finance portfolio, indicate that the majority of the Magdiwang leaders had abandoned or would soon abandon Bonifacio. Evidently, their major differences with the Magdalo Council were resolved with the apportionment of positions. Cavitismo won the day. This also ties up with Bonifacio's charge of a secret pro-Caviteño campaign. In this connection, it should be noted that none of the other leaders of the Katipunan, notably Jacinto, were even mentioned for positions at Tejeros. It was just those men in Cavite. Rival power centers. But before that, let me just drink from my cup. Bonifacio refused to recognize the new government, obviously, as anyone would. In a document drawn at Tejeros, the Acta de Tejeros, and in another signed at Naik, the Naik military agreement, Bonifacio reasserted his leadership of the revolution, charging fraud and pressure in the Tejeros elections and accusing the Aguinaldo faction of treason by sowing discord and conniving with the Spaniards. Bonifacio and the other signatories of the Naik Agreement served notice that they were determined to continue direction of the revolution. The Naik military agreement appointed General Pio del Pilar as commander-in-chief of the revolutionary forces. Bonifacio also appointed Emilio Jacinto, general of the North Military Area, comprising the provinces of Morong Rizal, Bulacan, Nueva Ecija, and Manila. Bonifacio again attempted to assert his authority by ordering the rearrest of Spanish prisoners whom the Aguinaldo government, in one of its first acts, had ordered freed. The escorts of these prisoners were General Tomas Mascardo and Cayetano Topacio. Furthermore, Bonifacio was then planning to go to Batangas, where the regional movement had recognized his authority. There were now two declared and rival foci of power. In the ensuing struggle, several prominent leaders initially vacillated between the two, but this was Cavite and Bonifacio. And Bonifacio was not only a non-Caviteño among predominantly Caviteño leaders, but worse, a propertyless man in the midst of the Cavite elite. Not only that he was poor, he was also not from Cavite. Everything is stacked against him. All these elite men trying to grab the power. And moreover, Aguinaldo had won an election. This gave his position a stamp of legality of some sort, which carried weight with the Ilustrados, because they were all about official things. Bonifacio did not have a chance. With more or less naked opportunism, Those who at first joined him later abandoned the founder of the Katipunan and turned against him. Contrite turncoats. Among these leaders were Artemio Ricarte, Pio del Pilar, and Severino de las Alas. All were signatories of the Naik military agreement. General Ricarte was persuaded by the Aguinaldo group to take his oath as Captain General. General Pio del Pilar, whom Aguinaldo had discovered together with General Noriel conferring with Bonifacio in Naik, readily switched sides, admitting contritely according to Aguinaldo that Noriel and he were blinded by false promises. It is interesting to note how Del Pilar, Noriel, and De las Alas were afterwards able, each in his own way, to make up for having once supported Bonifacio. Del Pilar testified in the trial of Bonifacio, alleging that the latter had been forcing officers to join him. Later, he and General Noriel were among those who adamantly opposed to the commutation of Bonifacio's sentence for the cause of revolution. As for Severino de las Alas, it was he who was made the patently false charges that the friars had bribed Bonifacio to establish the Katipunan and egg the Filipinos into fighting a war for which they were poorly armed. That Bonifacio ordered the burning of the convent and church of Indang, that his soldiers had taken by force from the people carabaos and other animals, and finally that Bonifacio and his men were planning to surrender to the Spaniards. From Aguinaldo's point of view, Bonifacio was a threat, a big one. He had to be eliminated. He therefore ordered Colonel Agapito Bonzon to arrest Bonifacio and his brothers. They were charged with sedition and treason before a military court presided over by General Mariano Noriel. The trial opened in April 29, 1897 and was over by May 4, despite a change of venue due to military reverses. Now let's talk about the mock trial. The trial was a farce from the beginning to the end. Personal prejudice and the very fact that the man on trial was the enemy of the president Aguinaldo was, it made a verdict of guilty a foregone conclusion. Consider these facts. First, all the members of the Council of War were Aguinaldo men, including not only General Noriel, but also General Tomas Mascardo, who Bonifacio had earlier arrested in connection with the freeing of Spanish prisoners. Second, Bonifacio's counsel, Placido Martinez, acted more like a prosecutor, going so far as to say that if a punishment worse than death was available, Bonifacio deserved it for plotting against Aguinaldo, Aguinaldo's death. Fucking what? He was supposed to be his counsel, but his counsel was like, yeah, if there's anything worse than death, give it to him. Third, the court gave credence to the fantastic story of Lieutenant Colonel Pedro Giron. Mian, hello. We were just talking about, how they eventually unalived Andres Bonifacio because, he was a threat to Aguinaldo's leadership. So now, they gave the court credence to the story of Lieutenant Colonel Pedro Giron, a Bonifacio partisan turned state witness who said that Bonifacio had given him 10 pesos in advance to kill Aguinaldo in case the latter did not submit to Bonifacio's authority, or so he says. During the trial, Bonifacio was told that he could not confront Giron as the latter had been killed in Naik. So they were like, oh, Giron totally said this, that he was told to kill Aguinaldo. But oopsie, he cannot testify here because you know what? He's dead. But, but after Bonifacio's death, Giron was seen in the company of these prosecutors, so he was not dead at all. It's just that they don't want his testimony to have like holes in it. The actual trial before Noriel lasted only one day, May 5. On May 6th, the decision was ready. Like, it was very fast. And then on May 8, Baldomero Aguinaldo, now the auditor of war, recommended to his cousin, Myong, not Myon, the president, approval of the decision rendered by the court on the ground that it had been proven that Bonifacio wanted to kill the president and overthrow the government. They basically, turned the table around. They were the ones who overthrown the Katipunan. They were the ones who wanted to kill Bonifacio. And on the same day, Aguinaldo commuted the death sentence to banishment, but was persuaded by Generals Noriel and Del Pilar to allow the sentence to stand. On May 10, Major Lazaro Macapagal, who had acted as secretary of the court-martial, carried out Noriel's order of execution. Okay, Bonifacio's role appraised. Historians may choose to evaluate the charge of sedition against Bonifacio on formalistic grounds, or they may assess the two protagonists, Aguinaldo and Bonifacio, in terms of their adherence to the people's revolutionary goals. The second criterion, adherence to the people's revolutionary goals, is certainly the fundamental one. The Cavite leaders condemned Bonifacio for his refusal to submit to what they claimed was duly constituted authority on the basis of the election at Tejeros, which was, by the way, again, not planned at all. Nobody planned that. He wasn't there for that. He was there to basically tell the Magdalos and Magdiwangs to, kiss and make up. But when he went there, they're like, oh, let's hold an election, and oh, now you're out. Fuck Katipunan. But even setting aside Bonifacio's charges of a rigged election and the obvious maneuvers that preceded this election, there remains the question of representation. It was very clear from the start, as well as from the roster of the elected officials of the other revolutionary councils, were neither represented nor consulted. They didn't know about this. In his letters to Jacinto, Bonifacio mentioned his misgivings on the score, although his position is weakened by having consented to the election. That was his mistake. As far as the Katipunan was concerned, the revolution was being conducted in separate areas by various members of the organization, and no thought of setting up a formal government had been entertained because of the pressures of conducting the uprising. They were so busy with the uprising that they were not really thinking that far ahead. They just wanted to be free from the Spanish. But these people from Cavite, again, advanced sila mag-isip. They thought in advance that, oh, we're gonna need a government, and that government should be held by us, people from Cavite. A careful scrutiny of events supports the conclusion that the sudden call on October 31, 1896 for a revolutionary government was in fact a planned preemptive action of the Cavite leadership executed at a time when its victories within the province spurred elitist ambitions to seize the control and the direction of the revolution. In fact, the Cavite leadership later succeeded in bringing under its wing other forces in other provinces, gave it formal status. But it should not be forgotten that at its inception, no matter how it represented itself, it was no more than a provincial government without representation even from the other Tagalog provinces alone. The regional government of Batangas, for example, recognized Bonifacio. Bonifacio could not have been dangerous to the revolution as a whole, for he remained resolved to continue the anti-Spanish struggle. Neither was he a threat to the revolutionary movement in Cavite, since he was planning to move out of Cavite. But he was a threat to the Cavite leadership that wanted to seize control of the entire revolution, and for this reason he had to be eliminated. Let me rephrase that to make it easier. He was a threat to the ambition of a selected few rich people who wanted power, so they had to kill him. Given Bonifacio's prestige with the masses, as the Katipunan Supremo, Aguinaldo's leadership could be stabilized only by Bonifacio's death. Bonifacio's actions after Tejeros had been branded by some as counter-revolutionary. This charge touches on the fundamental question of who among the protagonists adhered most faithfully to the people's revolutionary goals. Up to the time of his death, Bonifacio had no record of compromise, nor did he ever issue any statement of doubtful patriotism. His actions were uncompromising against the enemy and stern towards those who showed weakness before the Spaniards. On the other hand, the group that eliminated Bonifacio was the one that subsequently entered into a series of compromises with the enemy, which negated the original objectives of the revolution. Resistance to the forces of compromise cannot be counter-revolutionary. The defeat of Bonifacio at Tejeros was the defeat of the revolution. The initial success of the revolution, which had influenced many members of the local elite to join the movement, complicated the composition of the leadership. The elimination of Bonifacio simplified both the leadership and its alternatives. There was only one logical outcome of the triumph of the elite. Leading the revolution meant leading it to suit the desires of those who had interests to defend. Such a leadership could only offer a vacillating attitude towards the enemy. The long trek to compromise. Aguinaldo's moment of triumph at Tejeros was short-lived, as he deserved. Even the leaders occupied themselves with jockeying for position and consolidating control over the revolutionary movement. Governor Camilo de Polavieja launched a determined offensive on Cavite. On March 25, 3 days after the Tejeros Convention, Imus fell to the Spaniards. Bacoor, Noveleta, Kawit, Binakayan, and Santa Cruz de Malabon were captured in quick succession. A bloody hand-to-hand fight failed to save the San Francisco de Malabon. After its fall on April 6, the town surrounded submitted to Spanish occupation. Aguinaldo retreated to Naik. Many patriotic volunteers, ignoring an amnesty proclamation, continued to reinforce his ranks. But on May 3, after a bloody battle, Aguinaldo was forced to retreat again. Defeat followed defeat until by May 17, the whole of Cavite was once more in Spanish hands. Aguinaldo fled to Talisay like a coward. Batangas, where he joined up with General Miguel Malvar. Spanish troops attacked Talisay on May 30, inflicting another defeat on the combined forces of the two generals. Aguinaldo then again left Batangas with around 500 men. June 10 found him camped at Mount Puray near Montalban, where on June 14, 1897, he won a victory against Spanish forces that attacked his headquarters. Deciding that Biak na Bato in San Miguel, Bulacan provided a more favorable terrain for his base, Aguinaldo moved his headquarters there. So he just kept on moving because he was losing. Reformist activism. In July, a manifesto appeared bearing the nom de guerre Malabar. An almost identical manifesto issued by Aguinaldo in September proves that the earlier one was his as well. The Malabar Manifesto is a curious document. It called on the brave sons of the Philippines to shift to guerrilla warfare and ambuscades so that the rebel forces could thus, for an indefinite period, defy Spain, exhaust her resources, and oblige her to surrender from poverty. It advocates the extension of the revolutionary movement to other provinces so that once the revolution had become general, the revolutionaries could attain their goals. This sounded like a call for a protracted struggle, for a war of attrition, like until we examine closely what Aguinaldo calls the ends which we all so ardently desire. So, what are those ends? Let's look at them one by one. First, the expulsion of the friars and restitution of the townships of the lands which the friars have appropriated, dividing the incumbencies held by them, as well as the episcopal sees equally between peninsular and insular secular priests. Number two, Spain must concede to us, as she has to Cuba, parliamentary representation, freedom of the press, toleration of all religious sects, laws common with hers, and administrative and economic autonomy. 3. Equality in treatment and pay between peninsular and insular civil servants. So you see, they were like basically going back to the demands of the Ilustrados. Revolution, Katipunan, absolutely dead. She died. She fell off a ditch. Number 4. Restitution of all lands appropriated by the friars to the townships or to the original owners, or in default of finding such owner, the state is to put them up to public auction in small lots of a value within the reach of all and payable within 4 years, the same as the present state lands. Number 5, finally, abolition of the government authorities, power to banish citizens, as well as all unjust measures against Filipinos, legal equality for all persons, whether peninsular or insular, under the civil as well as the penal code. Coming from the leader of the revolution, these demands were strange indeed, for they were all premised on the continuation of Spanish sovereignty. They were goals appropriate for the earlier reform movement and constituted a clear abandonment of the fundamental revolution objective of the Katipunan under Bonifacio. Separation from Spain, independence, gone down the drain. As far as the class that now led the revolution was concerned, it was running true to form, willing to fight, but ready to retreat, capable of fighting bravely, but prudently preferring to negotiate in pursuance of its own interests. The formula evidently was to use the fighting as a leverage for negotiations. There is a clear indication of this frame of mind in this very manifesto, where Aguinaldo was calling for protracted hostilities. His last sentence read, "The war must be prolonged to give the greatest signs of vitality possible, so that Spain may be compelled to grant our demands. Otherwise, she will consider us an effete race and curtail rather than extend our rights." And I would like to point out that they are using she because she is motherland. They still think of Spain as motherland, giving her a female pronoun. This manifesto was widely circulated, even in Spanish controlled areas. Yes, they do. Well, where were we? If the Spanish authorities read it, as they most probably did, could they have failed to note Aguinaldo's willingness to accept the continuation of Spanish rule? Which Isabella? Because, like, in the beginning, like, when the Spanish came, it was Isabella and Ferdinand, right? We have actually read about it in the beginning parts of the series. And that's why it was kind of chaotic because Ferdinand wanted basically mercantilism to be a thing. They wanted money, riches, but Isabella wanted to just shove Christianity down everyone else's throats. So that's why we had the clusterfuck that happened to us. It's a good thing if they looked at their colony as second-class citizens, but it isn't. Exactly, we were not really deemed as citizens. We were more like slaves. Because back then, the citizens were called Filipinos, and the natives were not called Filipinos. What they called Filipinos were Spaniards born here in the Philippines. But it's later on the term Filipino came to also include mestizos, the half-bloods, you know, and even the Chinese mestizos. And then later on, because they were all feeling the prejudice and like the disadvantages of being not fully Spanish from the mainland, they kind of formed a bond together. That's why the whole Filipino thing was generalized from like one very specific type of people to everyone living here in the Philippines. They didn't really think of us as citizens at all. It was very sad. Hold on, where were we? Let me just read. So this manifesto was widely circulated even in Spanish-controlled areas. And if the Spanish authorities read it, as they most probably did, they could have failed to note could they have failed to note Aguinaldo's willingness to accept the continuation of Spanish rule? By August, different groups had been resorting to guerrilla tactics. Forces of General Ricarte, Riego de Dios, Severino de las Alas, and Baldomero Aguinaldo attacked several Spanish garrisons. There were two attacks on San Rafael, Bulacan, both repulsed by the Spaniards, and a successful one on Paumbong by Colonel Gregorio del Pilar on August 31. 6,000 men under Ramon Tagle fought a bloody battle in Mount Tao near Atimonan, Tayabas from September 3 to the 9th. But lost to the Spanish troops, Tagle was captured and executed. While this battle raged, Generals Llanera, Manuel, Tino, and Mamerto Natividad attacked Aliaga and Nueva Ecija. It took 8,000 troops to repel the attackers. The guerrillas also operated in Batangas, Laguna, Zambales, and Pangasinan. The people continued to fight. In early October, the garrisons of Concepcion, Tarlac, and San Quintin, Pangasinan were attacked, and General Malvar's men laid siege on San Pablo, Laguna. However, all these actions failed. But even as the people fought on against all odds in many provinces, despite Aguinaldo's own ringing call to engage in protracted guerrilla warfare And notwithstanding the grandiose plans for a Biak na Bato Republic and Constitution, Aguinaldo had already entered into negotiations with the enemy as early as August. Like, even before all of these attacks happened, he was already negotiating with the Spanish. In the manner of all colonialists, the Spaniards alternately used a policy of attraction and a policy of repression. After the fall of Imus in March, Vieja had issued an amnesty proclamation, which the majority of the population simply ignored. His successor, Primo de Rivera, subsequently revived the amnesty offer, and after the Spanish victories in Cavite, gave other inducements such as pardons for minor offenders, the return of exiled patriots, and the lifting of the embargo on the property of suspected revolutionaries. It should be noted that 2 attempts at mediation had been made prior to the Tejeras Conventions by the Jesuit Father Pio P. and the Spanish journalist Rafael Comenge. Bonifacius suspected that at the time that Aguinaldo was considering these offers, but the latter evidently shied away from dealing with the Spanish negotiator. But when 5 months later, Pedro A. Paterno, a prominent lawyer descended from Chinese mestizos, volunteered his services, he had the right credentials for both sides. Paterno arrived in Biak na Bato on August 8, 1897. The next day, he presented a letter to Aguinaldo offering his services as mediator, although the letter states that reforms will be forthcoming when the fighting ends. Paterno does not say that this is a Spanish promise, but only that he had often heard the Governor-General say so. Moreover, there is no mention of the specific reforms, only as suggestions that the rebels rely on the good intentions of Primo de Rivera. The bargain. All right. There were those who objected to any negotiations, but obviously Aguinaldo himself was ready to negotiate. He has already been negotiating since August. For only 2 days later, he ordered the release of prisoners taken in the Battle of Puray and informed Governor Rivera of this fact in a letter in which he assured Rivera of his high esteem and great respect for the Governor-General, who he also declared was respected and loved by the Filipino people. Aguinaldo followed up this conciliatory act with a draft agreement which merely repeats what Paterno said regarding Spanish intentions of instituting reforms, and then appoints Paterno as arbitrator with full powers not to negotiate for reforms, but only to determine, fix, and receive such funds as the Spanish government may concede. Once these funds have been secured, Aguinaldo promised to surrender all arms. It's all about the money, baby. The coming to what would become the crux of the negotiations, this sentence appears in the draft. The president and his council considered that this action on their part was worth 3 million pesos. The next paragraph again mentions the funds. Once the money has been received, Aguinaldo and company asked to be allowed to freely reside under the protection of the Spanish authorities in the towns where our property has been destroyed, or in foreign parts where we shall have established our homes. Because, they were obviously expecting that the people would hate them, and rightly so. They were like, give us 3 million and we will be so chill, but you also got to protect us because our people will totally hate us for betraying them. So yeah, that's their deal. The draft ends with an enumeration of reforms requested and a 3-year deadline for their accomplishments. Among the reforms asked, expulsion of the religious orders, representation in the Spanish Cortes, ring a bell, equal justice for Spaniards and Filipinos freedom of association, and of the press. Of course, such basic reforms were not within the power of a governor general to grant. This and the fact that in the second draft, all mention of these demands was omitted make one strongly suspect that their inclusion was only pro forma, which seems to have been the view of the Spanish authorities. For their counter-proposal was nothing more than a detailed schedule of payments, the surrender of arms, and the departure of Aguinaldo for Hong Kong. The initial offer of Governor Rivera was 400,000, but the final amount mentioned in this counter-proposal made in November was for 1,700,000 pesos. Now, up to this day, 1,700,000 pesos is a big money for someone who is not rich, like me. But back then, it's not just big, it's astronomical, it's huge. Like, what the hell do you do with 1,700,000 pesos during that year? Aguinaldo's second draft was identical to the first, with the important omission of the enumeration of reforms and the deadline for carrying them out. Its only proviso was the appointment of Paterno as sole and absolute negotiator. There was no more talk of reforms, only more discussion of the synchronization of the schedules, until the third and final schedule was approved on December 14, 1897. The pact provided that the Spanish government would pay a total of 800,000 pesos, provided Aguinaldo and his companions went into voluntary exile. This sum would be paid out in 3 installments: 400,000 pesos to Aguinaldo upon his departure from Biak na Bato, 200,000 when the arms surrendered exceeded 700, and 200,000 when the Te Deum had been sung at the cathedral in Manila and the general amnesty had been proclaimed. Spain further agreed to pay another 900,000 pesos to be distributed among non-combatants who had suffered losses as a result of the war. It should be recalled that Aguinaldo reissued his Malabar Manifesto in September after the preliminary negotiations had begun. This manifesto asked the people to take offensive switch to guerrilla warfare. Oh, that's your birthday? Interesting. Now you know that there's something historic that happened then. So, yes, he was like basically negotiating all these, like to get money from the Spaniards, while he was urging the people to do guerrilla warfare and thus fight Spain for an indefinite period, wear out her resources, and oblige her to give up through sheer weakness. Blah, blah, blah. It is now clear that the people's sacrifices were to be used merely as a leverage in the negotiations. It was for his own gain. Even this would have been acceptable if Aguinaldo wanted to strengthen his hand to secure firm commitments for reforms, but sadly, this was not the case. As Governor Primo de Rivera put it, the proposition framed by Senor Paterno clearly indicated that chief among the wishes of those he represented was that, before they lay down their arms for the welfare of the country, their future be assured, exempting them from all punishments and providing them with the indispensable means of subsistence, either within the national territory or abroad. Magandang gabi sa inyo, Day. Good evening. It's not morning yet, it's only 11 p.m. here, so it's still a long time for me until the morning. But I don't think we will reach the morning. We might be at least halfway, at the very least, halfway through this chapter. Now, the logic of Tejeros. Now, remember, the Tejeros Convention was the big ruse that the Caviteños pulled on your boy Bonifacio to get him booted out of leadership. Basically, they were play fighting amongst themselves, and since Supremo was the one who is known by everyone as the leader, he came down to Cavite to settle the disagreement between the Magdalos and the, what's the other one? Magdiwang. Now, when they went there, instead of discussing how they would like settle their misunderstandings and see where they can meet in between, they suddenly called for an election wherein not only Bonifacio was not elected president, all of the posts were given to Caviteños. So the negotiations went on from August to December, with Paterno going back and forth, carrying proposals and counter-proposals between Manila and Biak na Bato. All the while, the people were being exhorted to fight, and preparations were going on for the establishment of the Biak na Bato Republic, complete with a constitution. Where were we? All the while, the people were being exhorted to fight. The preparations were going to the establishment of the Biak na Bato Republic, complete with a constitution. Although this was only a copy, yes, a copy of the Cuban Constitution of Jimaguayu. The Constitution was signed on November 1, 1897. What? You haven't ridden your bike yet to Biak na Bato? Is that far from you? Like, I used to ride my bike in the morning, but I have become very lazy to wake up because I've been streaming. I don't have time to bike anymore. I'm streaming at night and working at day. So yeah. Anyway, so remember these people, yeah? You know, the Biak na Bato and the Tejeros convention thingy, where Emilio Aguinaldo was president, and originally Secretary of the Interior was our boy Andres Bonifacio, but he was booted because he was quote unquote not educated enough. Okay, it should be noted that by and large, this was still the old Cavite group. See? Same people. Mariano Trias, De Dios, two Aguinaldos. Okay, so there was also an assembly of representatives whose signal act was to ratify the agreement of Biak na Bato. Considering that as early as August, Aguinaldo had already given clear evidence of his willingness to end his struggle. Again, he was negotiating how much money he was going to get. It would seem that the writing of a constitution and the formation of a government were exercises in futility because, they were just for show. He was not really in it for the long haul. He wasn't a ride or die. He just wanted to cash in on that and then run away to wherever he pleases under the protection of the Spanish colonizers. The first sentence of the Constitution declared the separation of the Philippines from the Spanish monarchy was no more than empty rhetoric, because while the handful of leaders were mulling over the adoption of the Constitution, these very men were already deep in negotiations for the surrender of the revolution. Perhaps they harbored the illusion that the result of the negotiations could be made to appear as an agreement between two governments. On the other hand, they could not have seriously believed that the Spaniards would regard them as more than mere insurgents. Besides, affecting the distribution of high-sounding titles of office, the formation of the Biak na Bato Republic, and the promulgation of the Constitution served at least one other purpose. The Constitution established a centralized government. In the eyes of its signatories, it gave them the right to dissolve such autonomous regional governments as those of Central Luzon and Batangas. Because remember, back then, before the whole thing in Tejeros and Biak na Bato, there were separate governments, and all of them were just basically being contacted by the Katipunan under the Supremo, which is Andres Bonifacio. And now, here comes Emilio taking over as new president, and then now that they are basically selling out, these governments would be dissolved because they declare themselves like the consolidated, centralized government of the Philippines. That decrees for this purpose were issued as late as November and December, when surrender was clearly imminent, gives rise to the suspicion that the end desired was a consolidation of leadership in one center. Now let's talk about the negation of Pugad Lawin. You know, the cry of Pugad Lawin, the one where we talked about earlier now, where they teared their cedulas, which basically prove that they are under the Spanish government. So the Pact of Biak na Bato was a shameful repudiation of all the revolution had stood for. Like we studied it in elementary school, as if it's one good thing, right? That they basically made a centralized government. But in reality, it made a mockery of the revolutionary cry for freedom that had resounded in Pugad Lawin when the people, led by Bonifacio, were still in control of their revolution. Biak na Bato was the logical outcome of the Ilustrado seizure of power at Tejeros. The pact was nothing more nor less than a business proposition. The negotiations had not dragged on for 5 months because of any insistence by Aguinaldo's side that the Spaniards comply with any of the people's revolutionary demands. The principal bone of contention had been the amount to be paid to the leaders and the terms of payment. They were not really pushing for the freedom of the people. They were only using the people so that they can negotiate how much money and how fast they can get it. Hello, Kira. Welcome to the stream. This is now me molding about Pugad Lawin being tarnished by Biak na Bato because of the dirty old man, Myong. Not Myon, it's Myong. After he had concluded personally, satisfactorily the arrangement with the Spanish government, Aguinaldo complied with a demand contained in the first Spanish counterproposal by issuing a proclamation in which he declared his sincere desire to aid the Spanish government in the pacification of the Philippine Islands, and then proceeded to brand as tulisanes, or bandits. That's the word where the Filipino word tulisan came from. Without the right to call themselves insurrecto or revolutionary, or to profit by any of the charities of other benefits forthcoming under the agreement with the Spanish government, all those who disobey my orders lay down their arms. I need to take a moment because this has me very angry. Aguinaldo and his group left for Hong Kong like the fucking cowards they are on December 27th. A correspondent of El Imparcial A Madrid newspaper reported that before boarding the ship that was to take him to Hong Kong, Aguinaldo himself led in shouting "Vivas" for Spain and the Philippines, always Spanish. The fucking nerve of this guy. Hope he's burning in hell. The same correspondent wrote that he interviewed Aguinaldo, who asked him to convey to Spain his pledge of loyalty. Damn, it's hard. Thank you for the hydrate and the stretch. Let me just stretch so I can briefly stop molding and drink so I can cool my head down. Okay, the correspondent writes that Aguinaldo told him,
The patriotism I speak of today will be unchangeable.
okay, when we say patriotism, he is talking about patriotism to Spain, the mother country.
We took the field not because we wished for separation from the mother country, but because we were tired of bearing the material and moral burden of that ark, the keystone of which in our country is the friars.
I cannot read this in any, ounce of respect. I am sorry.
It is quite true that the Katipunan instilled in us another desire of that of independence. But that desire was unattainable, and moreover, it was in opposition to our sentiments. It served as the banner of Andres Bonifacio, a cruel man
Whom I ordered shot. He fucking murdered him.
and with his death, the Katipunan disappeared. You may be sure of this. We ask no reforms other than the influence which the friars hold under the laws in all our towns be restrained. The Marquess de Estella, with this great knowledge of the country, will know how to introduce such reforms as may be timely and necessary. I recognize that when we took the field, we wandered from the right road. More than this, today, recognizing our error, we ask for peace, and I commit all those who have followed me to accept it, denouncing as outlaws in the decree I signed at Biak na Bato, all those who do not recognize it. And that's the end of whatever the fuck this is, said by this coward. Aguinaldo requested the correspondent to tell General de Rivera that if the latter deemed it proper to make Biak na Bato a barrio of San Miguel, Aguinaldo wished the barrio to be called Barrio de Primo de Rivera, or Barrio of the Peace. On January 2, 1898, the sum of 400,000 from the Spanish government was deposited by Aguinaldo in the Hong Kong Bank. Aguinaldo and his companions lived frugally on the interest of this deposit. In a note written by Felipe Agoncillo and submitted to the United States Commissioners at Paris in September 1898, Agoncillo states that Aguinaldo and his companions did not want to touch the money because they intended to buy arms to start another revolution if Spain failed to carry out the terms of the peace agreement. I'm pressing X to doubt. On the other hand, Aguinaldo himself would state in the future that he considered the money to be his personal property. In 1929, when political foes asked him to render an accounting of the money, Aguinaldo summarized the Biak na Bato provision on this point as follows. This was his own words. I was to be at liberty to live abroad with such of my companions as wanted to accompany me. And I accordingly chose Hong Kong as a place of residence, where the 800,000 pesos of indemnity were to be paid in 3 installments. Refusing to be baited into making an accounting, he declared that as per the pact provisions, the amount of 400,000 pesos belonged exclusively to him, shrewdly adding,
that he is willing to do so on condition that revelations be first made of the occult mysteries of the inversion of many millions of pesos for the campaign for independence. Aguinaldo was thus able to stalemate his opponents, the politicians of the American colonial era, who likewise preferred not to open the subjects to funds entrusted to their care. Quarrels over spoils. It is not surprising that men who had been so preoccupied with the amount and manner of payments of the indemnity they asked for should soon be quarreling over the spoils, like the little rats they are. Thinking it's grossly unfair that the Aguinaldo Group had been awarded 400,000, while they who remained in Biak de Bato had received nothing, nada. Isabelo Artaco, Artemio Ricarte, Isidoro Torres, Pasiano Rizal, and Francisco Macabulos Suleiman petitioned the government general barely 2 days after Aguinaldo's departure to give them the remaining 400,000 to be divided among those who had suffered personal losses and did not have the means to support themselves. The governor general gave them 200,000 pesos, which they promptly divided among themselves. Among those who received large amounts were Emilio Riejo de Dios, 7,000 pesos; Francisco Macabulos, 14,000 pesos; Lacuna and Villa del Pilar, 19,000 pesos; Isabelo Artaco, 5,000; Miguel Malvar, 8,000; Mariano Trias, 6,000; Artemio Ricarte, 6,500; Pedro Paterno, 89,500 for distribution as per agreement at meetings in Malacanang in 1898. And that is me reciting how much these men's lives and their whatever sort of pride they have are worth. The Hong Kong exiles. The action of his erstwhile comrades in arms angered Aguinaldo. He called a meeting for the members of the Supreme Council residing in Hong Kong, and the group promptly elected new council members from among the exiles. Imagine the gall of these people, displacing those left in Biak na Bato, whom Aguinaldo now considered as traitors because they received money just like him. This new council then proceeded to declare the division of the money by the Biak na Bato generals an illegal act. Fucking clown. This new Supreme Council of the nation, elected by exiles from among exiles, was still regarded by Aguinaldo as representing the Filipino people, who, by the way, never asked for this. That the Hong Kong junta did not really speak for the people was conclusively proved by the people themselves, while the exiles were busying themselves with petty little quarrels. The people continued to support the revolution. And the struggle continues. Aguinaldo's departure did not mean the end of the struggle. Evidently, neither the order of the august president of the Republic of Biak na Bato to lay down their arms, nor his threats to regard them as tulisanes if they disobeyed him, made much of an impression on the people and their leaders. A few from the old Aguinaldo group, some of Bonifacio's men, and many new patriots who sprang from the rebel localities. There was practically no interruption in the revolutionary activities of the people. You know, some of them die, some of them turn into, I don't know, monsters who betray their own people, but there will never be a want or a lack of people who will rebel. They will always be there. They didn't need Aguinaldo. They're gonna still continue the revolution even if Bonifacio is dead. As in the early days of the Katipunan, the people once again demonstrated. Money for me, but not for thee. Yeah, a lot like that. Thank you for the lurk Hawaiian pizza. So, As in the early days of the Katipunan, the people once again demonstrated by their spontaneous and almost simultaneous rising in different provinces that they had the will to fight for their freedom. Aguinaldo has sailed for Hong Kong at the year's end. By February 1898, revolutionaries tried to cut the railway lines to Dagupan to prevent the arrival there of Spanish reinforcements. By March, the struggle had gained new momentum. In northern Zambales, the local people besieged the cable station and seized the telegraph line between Manila and Bolinao, the landing place of the cable from Hong Kong. In many other places, new leaders were taking up the struggle, capturing and holding towns, killing friars or holding them and other Spaniards prisoners. Some of these local actions were directed against the Guardia de Honor, a group organized by some friars from among their more fanatical parishioners. This group was used as a counter-revolutionary force to spy upon those suspected by the friars of being rebels or filibusteros. The People's Fury. Revolutionary forces became active again in Pampanga, Laguna, Pangasinan, Nueva Ecija, Tarlac, Camarines Norte, and even as far as La Union and Ilocos Sur. Bulacan revolted again under the leadership of Isidoro Torres. He established 2 insurgent camps near Malolos. An Augustinian friar of Malolos was hacked to death with bolos. General Francisco Macabulo Soliman, who was an officer under Aguinaldo, renewed his operations in Central Luzon. On March 25, 1,000 Ilocanos from La Union and Ilocos Sur under the leadership of Isabelo Abaya seized Candon. They dragged 2 priests out of the church where the latter had hidden, took them to the hills, and killed them. The revolt erupted in Daet, Camarines, but it was suppressed by the dreaded Guardia Civil. Manila itself was not exempt from the unrest. The Guardia Civil instituted a reign of terror in the city, raiding houses where they suspected that Katipunan meetings were being held. In one such house, the Guardia Civil killed 10 of the men they found there and imprisoned 60 others. Let me just continue. Katipunan Revival. Several conspiracies were credited to a certain Feliciano Hoxon, a pharmacist who, having imposed the Pact of Biak na Bato, refused to go into exile with Aguinaldo because fuck that dude. Instead, he went to Barrio Pugad Baboy in Caloocan, from which base he continued exhorting the people to support the revolution. He also sent letters and circulars pleading with other revolutionary leaders not to surrender. He was he was the most influential in the area around Manila. The Spaniards considered all these evidences of resistance as mere bandit operations. But 2 documents attest to the fact that the killing of Spaniards, and especially friars, the seizure of towns, and the other people's actions were not just isolated expressions of rebellion, personal vendetta, or anti-clericalism, but conscious efforts to achieve the goals of the old Katipunan. It was very much still alive. One such document is Jacinto's Sangguniang Hukuman, written in February 1898 by Bonifacio's close associate and friend and the acknowledged brains of the Katipunan. This document proves that Jacinto was busy with organization work in Laguna. Another proof of the serious intent of both Biak na Bato rebel activities is the existence of a second document, the Constitution of the General Executives Committee of Central Luzon. This constitution was adopted in April 1898. and had 45 signatories, among them General Macabulos and Valentin Diaz, one of the founders of the Katipunan. Remember him? The revolutionary leaders of Central Luzon, headed by General Macabulos, had been organizing municipal councils in many towns. They called an assembly into sessions, and this assembly produced a constitution and established a central government which tried to operate in Tarlac, Pampanga, Pangasinan, La Union, Nueva Ecija for the purpose of raising an army and continuing the fight for independence. Yes, we are. Hello, CTQ Breaker Prime. I still don't know which to call you. I'll just call you City because that's the first two letters. All right. Now, the Cebuanos rose in revolt almost at the same time with their Tagalog brothers. In February 1898, Francisco Llamas, who used to be the municipal treasurer of San Nicolas, Cebu, began organizing and immediately found enthusiastic support. So you see, this is becoming not a trend, but like it's the same all over the country. The people still wanted to revolt. A revolutionary committee was formed, and on April 2, with shouts of Viva la Independencia, long live independence, the revolutionaries, though poorly armed, as usual, marched towards the capital city. Commanded by Leon Kilat, the revolutionary forces were augmented at every turn by enthusiastic volunteers until their number reached around 6,000. In some places, they engaged the Guardia Civil in hand-to-hand combat. They took the capital on April 3rd, and then the rebels sacked the convents and burned parts of the business section. In 5 days, just 5 days, they were in control of practically the whole province as other localities followed suit. Because, hey, they're killing it. Let's follow them. 8 friars were captured and 3 of them were killed. Only when sizable reinforcements arrived were the Spaniards able to retake the principal towns. Revolutionary activity began on the island of Panay in March 1898 with a reformation of Conspirators Committee in Molo, Iloilo. Okay, to cap it all off, Aguinaldo capitulated. The people did not. The extent of the ferment and the seriousness with which the Spaniards viewed the situation may be gleaned from the fact that when the new provincial governors for Luzon arrived from Spain in March, only a few were allowed to assume their positions in the provinces to which they had been assigned because of the danger to their lives. When Aguinaldo arrived aboard the American ship McCulloch on May 19, 1898, the rebellion had been going on. The Pact of Biak na Bato ended hostilities only insofar as the compromising sector of the revolutionary forces was concerned. The people continued to struggle. Aguinaldo and his clique surrendered, but the people did not. And I'm not sure if it will be mentioned in this book because it's been a long time since I last saw this, but a lot of things happened that would make us view Aguinaldo as this scheming little rat that he is. And you might think that he's still the first president of the Philippines, and there were like pictures of him and whatnot. But I will have you know that I forgot who told me this. It's either one of my aunts or it could be during Cast 10 from Sir Shao Chua, one of the most popular historians of our time, because I was under his tutelage in his class before. They said that when Emilio Aguinaldo was very old, he was like at his house and people were like treating the house as a tourism spot, right? Because it's a historic place. And they would go there and ask him. They would literally ask him if he killed Bonifacio. Like, even in his old age, that thing was still being slapped on his face. He was still being accused. Well deserved, I say. I hope he's rolling in his fucking grave. And yeah, I'm usually very, very sad to see paper bills go, but I'm glad that we don't have a 5 peso bill anymore. He doesn't deserve that. This bitch, TLDR, basically was like, okay, grabbing power from the Katipunan Supremo. Okay, now I have power. Which is, by the way, decided by all his bros from Cavite. Nobody got a say in it who's not a Caviteño. And then right after that, he's like telling the people to, oh, you go and do the stuff, like struggle, continue, viva la revolucion. But on the side, he was already negotiating with the Spanish government of how much he's going to get if he would surrender these people. He treated this whole fucking thing like a business deal. He and his people. And then when he left, like the coward that he is, he went to Hong Kong. All those people that he left here who were like rooting for him, believing in him, joined him in the Biak na Bato, whatever that clownery was. They were like, you know what? It's not fair that Aguinaldo got his share. He basically got 800,000, 400,000 pesos. They're like, we need to be paid too, you know? Cash up. And Spain, surprisingly, they cashed up. Not as much, but like, they still gave them money. And his reaction was like, oh no, that's not allowed. That's illegal. I don't approve of that. Huh? ¿Qué? ¿Por qué? Nani? The fuck? Anyway, TLDR, fuck that guy. So I will not be continuing with this today. Maybe we are going to continue next week. If you have not yet seen my schedule, let me just pull it up real quick because I have not memorized my schedule. Okay, let's see. What do we have here? All right, so today we are doing the history stream, meaning tomorrow I will not be with you, my dear ducklings. I'm so sorry. I have something very important to do. I have a very special guest. You might know her because I sometimes stream with her and I often raid her. And if she's on right now, I would raid her, but I don't think she is. So, yes, Moshi Vienna will be here tomorrow. He's probably gonna be here in the afternoon, but I also have like stuff in the morning, so no stream tomorrow for this mom. Yes, her, definitely. I like that you have her emotes. I love her emotes. They're so cute and unique. Anyway, yes, so no stream tomorrow, but on Friday, I will be on Halia's birthday stream. We are going to play answer some cocology questions. I don't know if there's going to be like a cocology question that I have not yet encountered before, but let's see. But most probably I've already read them. So yeah, I will be there. And Moshi will follow because like she has other stuff. She's going to be here, but she's still going to work online. Yeah, go figure. And then on Saturday, it's going to be a rest day for me and Moshi. Then I will see you on Sunday. We will have a celebration. Because on Sunday, we are celebrating my 500 followers on Twitter, but actually, I think it has gone past that. It's like 511 or 12. Yeah, something like that. I'm not really sure. And it's also a celebration for my 400 followers here on Twitch. But, if we could like push that to 500, kind of hard, I know. But if that would happen, that would be great. But anyway, we'll still be celebrating 400 followers here on Twitch. Yes, yes, yes. And, well, mostly I'm just gonna do some karaoke things. I'll be singing. Have you heard me like sing stuff on the karaoke? I sound absolutely terrifying. Yes, thank you, thank you. And then on Monday, we have our regular Mystic Mondays at 8 p.m. We are going to do some tarot card readings. And if I get tired of that, maybe we will talk about astrology. I've already talked about that before, like initially, but I don't think a lot of people were there yet. So I might like schedule a proper astrology session with y'all. And what else have I not yet announced? Oh my god. I think we need to watch this. Watch this! Because hold on, let me mute that for a while. I have been in, it's not a collab, but I have been hired as a voice actress for a certain project, and I want to share it with you guys. Hold on, let me just. How do I change that? Okay, let's make this quiet, and then how do I am very, very confused. Okay, there it is. Let's remove my PDF file, and then where is that? Confused, absolutely confused. Hold on, technical difficulties. I am still looking for the thing. Let me just look for it. Okay, found it, and where's that? I can't find it. Why? Why are you like this? Hold on, we will find it. I want to share it with you because this is my first ever voice acting gig that was paid, and I would like to share it with all of you. It's a Junji Ito story. Of course, it was rewritten so that it would flow better as like an audio drama. How do I show this? How do I show this? Hold on, let me. How do I? Very, very confused right now. Anyway, thank you for everyone who had been congratulating me for this. I am still trying really, really hard to figure out how to show this. About this one. It's not showing up. Oh no, it doesn't want to show up. What do I do? Is it showing up if I do this? Absolutely not. Why? Okay, let me remove it and see if this will work. Yes, is that the link? I still want to show it here. Hold on, let me just try it once more. Window capture, and then Where is my Chrome? This is not Chrome. Oh no, it's not showing up. Oh no, that's my TikTok. It's not showing up. Anyway, follow me on TikTok since, it doesn't want me to show the thing. So, yeah, I've been hired by Kyle the Average for the Junji Ito story Bronze Statue. Uh, I am voicing the scary old woman. Again, I'm sending the link here. I'm just going to remove my TikTok here. It's so sad. I can't show it to you. For some reason, it just hates my edge. Yes, it's this one. Let me just go to my just chatting screen so that you can see me clearer. So, yes, please do watch it. I worked really hard on it. It's not really perfect yet because it was my first paid gig. But aside from this one, I also lent my voice to Tabi Tabi Po, and they're on Spotify. You can listen to it for free. I am playing the role of Ate Ren, like the older, well, not really older, but like, yeah, the Ate role. And yeah, it's just so weird that all of a sudden I have all these voice acting gigs. Cool, but like weird because I've always wanted to be a voice actress when I was younger, like when I was in college. I've been trying to like apply or audition, but they didn't think my voice was like appropriate for a kid's show. Because I don't know, I sound scary. I'm creepy cute, So yeah, please do give them some love. Tell them I sent you. What else? Is there anything else? Oh! I'm going to say it in advance. I'm going to be part of a big collab next week on Saturday. Like, not this Saturday, next Saturday. It's going to be a ukulele collab. Because if you have not seen it yet, let me just take off my random hands over here. I do play the ukulele and where's my hands? Oh no, it's too big. Let me just quickly. Oh no, I deleted it. Where's my ukulele? Should I play something for you? Just to end this stream on a good note instead of me just molding over Aguinaldo. So yeah, I'll be on a ukulele collab on Saturday, the 17th of September. Yes. Hold on, let me just get my ukulele. Is it in tune? I believe it's in tune. Can you hear it? Stars shining bright above you. Night breezes seem to whisper, I love you. Birds singing in the sycamore tree. Dream a little dream of me. Say nighty night and kiss me. Just Just hold me tight and tell me you miss me while I'm all alone and blue as can be. Dream a little dream of me. Starts fading, but I linger on, dear, still craving your kiss. I'm longing to linger till dawn, dear, just saying this. Sweet dreams till sunbeams find you. Sweet dreams that leave all worries behind you. But in your dreams, whatever they be, dream a little dream of me. Oh no, I was not prepared, and my voice is like, I need water. I've been talking for almost 3 hours straight, and I was like, yeah, I'm gonna totally sing. But you know what? Who cares? Life is full of scuff. 1930s. Interesting. When I was in high school, I used to listen to a lot of war and post-war music, so mostly like 1940s. It's because my dad had a huge CD collection of during the war and post-war music, and I guess that influenced me. But yeah, so that is like, a preview of what you will hear on what day? Is it Saturday or Sunday? I totally forgot. I will have to check my schedule again. I believe it's Sunday. Yes, Sunday is my 500 followers on Twitter and 400 followers on Twitch celebration, 6 p.m. I will be having a video, okay? I cannot promise to sing like perfect, serious songs. By serious, I mean not meme songs, because when I run out of songs, I will just be probably singing stuff like sex bomb dancer songs. Oh, you also listen to post, during, and before war music. Interesting. I just love how their voices were like really rich, because up to a certain point when I gained consciousness in the 90s and 2000s, they were always like, the thing on the media is always like high and soprano voices, basically. Especially here in the Philippines, they had high regards for beat it queens like Regine Velasquez, Lani Lucha, who else? Between Escalante, Pelita Corrales, high voices in general. And like, as someone who is an alto, it's kind of refreshing for me to see that, back then this type of voice was deemed attractive, and hell yeah, it was sexy. I just listen to a lot of old music in general. Like, yes, I also listen to 70s and 80s music. I was actually part of a cover band when I was in college that exclusively played 80s music. It was an all-girl band. I was the vocalist and rhythm guitarist, but sometimes they would make me play the piano, and I would be like, yeah, okay, I guess, not really my thing, honey. But yeah, I would play it. But most of the time, I just do the singing and the guitar. And then I bought my first ukulele, and I never went back to the guitar ever again. Because, like, wow, this thing is so light. I can bring it anywhere and everywhere. And I did. I used to bring my ukulele to like field trips. I remember going to, where's that? Is that Isabella? No, was it Isabella? I forgot where I went. There was a lot of waves. Places are all the same for me. And I was like just bringing my guitar and singing. I've been a part of like several bands, and I rarely actually fit in terms of like my style, because you know the style that they wanted was either very very wild and raspy, or um you know, high, like what do you call that band again, Paramore, that type of sound. Like when I was in college, that was the sound that they were going for, and it was hard for me because like I sound like this. I sound like, I don't know, I sound like I just woke up and I'm barely understanding anything that's happening in front of me. But yeah, later on I have like accepted that this type of voice also has its charms, because for a long time I tried to, you know, change my voice to fit more into the standard. Because there's this boy, fuck you, Jolo, fucking egghead. He was like saying that my voice was scary. Yay, yes, let's go altos. And yeah, I was also in choirs a lot. Like when I was in high school, I belonged to two choirs, a school choir and like the parochial choir in my local church. I'm not really a religious person, but I liked singing, so I joined. And then when I went to college, I auditioned for my university's official choir. I got accepted. I trained with them for like 8 months, but due to health reasons, mainly my back is doing weird things. A disc slipped, sort of like, you know, the sacral and lumbar spine were not doing daijobu. I had to quit. Who said my voice is scary? A boy named Jolo. Fuck you. Fuck you, Jolo. Fuck your egghead. I'm. Well, to be fair, I do believe that my voice is somehow intimidating, but like not the horror type of like ghost type as he was implying. But yeah, I've learned to live with my voice. Sometimes I still do hate it because it doesn't fit with the songs that I'm trying to sing, especially when I was trying to sing a lot of K-pop. Because you know how K-pop songs are like very, very high in general? And they're made for a specific clean voice. And clean and high is not exactly my voice's brand. And yeah, that wasn't really working out for me. But yeah, I still do love singing K-pop songs here and there, especially Mamamoo songs. Are you familiar with them? Most specifically, I like Hwasa because she also has that raspy type of voice, and I think I kind of suit her songs more than regular K-pop songs. But it's so sad. I kind of like poppy, cutesy music too. Like for example, let's say "Oh My Girl." They're very very cutesy, but like I can't sing that. Akron, hi, 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 hi. But oh, funnily, there was like a period of time where I was singing a lot of Love Live songs. And you know how Love Live songs are, right? Like they're very, very high pitched and yeah, I had to do the fake anime girl voice. That's, where the Ubu Gamer girl voice came from. It's my face, wherein I was very much addicted to Love Live. Dai, you also love Hwasa? I love her songs. Oh, good night, dear me star. I hope you have a great dream. And dream a little dream of me. Yes, I had a school idol phase. Why do you think am I mostly purple? It's because I saw Nozomi and I'm like, oh, she's a fortune teller. Well, at least she's trying to be. And I'm a fortune teller. I should be also purple. And we both have like nice boobs. That just speaks to me, That's why I am mostly purple. Okay, on Sunday, I will sing for y'all. Do you want to fall asleep? Because, I can make it so that the set list would be very chill instead of me, screaming, use, use, usewa. I think I scheduled it kind of early. It's 6 p.m. So I scheduled it like that because it's a karaoke stream and, I can't really scream that much if it's already late. But if you want chill lullabies, I can do that as well. Hold on, let's check who else is online right now. Let me just... How do I do that? I am very, very confused with technology, so I am currently looking up Twitch, trying to see who else are online or streaming right now, so that we can choose which one to raid after we have a little chat over here. Although, to be honest, I don't really want to end stream. I just want to talk with you guys, but I know a lot of you need to go to school tomorrow. I also have somewhere to go tomorrow. Full disclosure, tomorrow morning I have to leave at 8 a.m. because I have to accompany Mama Makunawa to the doctors again. If you don't know, last month she was hospitalized and I was not able to stream for a few weeks because I had to stay with her in the hospital. We had to find blood donors and do a lot of blood work on her. So now we're just trying to do our best to maintain her health. And as the eldest and the most beautiful Bakunawa child, it is my Bathala given duty to, take care of Mama Bakunawa. So I won't be streaming tomorrow because I have things to do in the morning and a lovely guest to entertain in the afternoon and at night. Moshi will be staying here for a few days, so she would not be able to stream as well. So if you are a viewer of Moshi, please don't miss her too much. And if you do miss her, I will try to get her on Halia's collab after her work, I promise. And aside from that, yeah, that's all there's gonna be, because we're just gonna rest, chill out, go on dates. We're going to have a few days of rest because we don't see each other a lot. We see each other maybe once a month or every other month because we live kind of far apart, 8 hours apart by land. So it's also very expensive. So, but it's okay. It's okay. We're doing fine. How do I look at my? Oh, right. There we go. who do you wanna rate? Let's look. We have Maji doing art stream. We also have Pentel doing Apex Legends. Who else is there? Nanasa is playing Red Dead Redemption. I want to rate her one of these days, but I'm feeling shy, because I don't really have a lot of viewers, and I don't know, I just feel shy towards people who have like a big following. But I kind of want to rate her as a thank you, because when we were at Conquest, she dropped by our booth and she talked to us. She was very, very fun. Like, I wasn't there physically, but I was there as a VTuber. I can see her through the screen. Maybe some other time when I have like more viewers. I'm pretty shy. I'm shy towards hot ladies. Who else can we raid? Let's see. What's Pentel doing right now? How long has she been streaming? Okay, she's been streaming for 2 hours. And hold on. Do you want to raid Pentel? Am I shy towards myself? Absolutely not, because I'm very, very pretty. I know. But also at the same time, I know myself, but I don't know them personally, so I'm kind of shy, Anyway, should I send you over to Pentel? Yes, I think we would do that. Hold on, let me just go to my creator dashboard, because I'm a boomer and that's the only way I know how to do it. Alright, let's raid channel. Come on. It's not showing up. Oh! Oh no! I'm just about to raid someone, but thank you for the raid! Ariane Barthuro! How are you? Now I can't go. I have to entertain all of you. But yeah, I was about to end the stream, but thank you for the follow, Ariane and Inodis. Hi, I am Bibi Bakunawa. I am the hottie with the horns, your internet mom without a firstborn. I'm your fortune-telling, moon-eating dragon from the West Philippine Sea. My name is Bibi, but everyone here just calls me mommy. And I belong to Balangay Live. We are a VTuber group. I am about to debut on November, so please watch out. This is not my final form. I'm not going to be a chibibi all the time. Hi. Oh, where is Mori? I miss him. I haven't seen him in a while. Mori, where are you? Sorry, that very, very needy streamer girlfriend thingy. I think I'm that, but like on a more chill level. Like, I know my viewers. Like, if I don't see them for a long time, I'm like, where are they? Have they forgotten me? Don't they love me anymore? And Mori is one of those. Like, I remember him because he's like one of the first subscribers I've ever had. So yeah, welcome Raiders. I was just about to end. We just finished reading a history book, at least one chapter of it. And I also was like just generally talking about my thing as a singer, because like I sang a song for them. Marty, you're here. Did you hear that? I missed you. Why you're not here all the time? No, I'm kidding. It's okay. I understand that everyone has their own, their things. Some are studying, some are working. But I just like to joke that, why are you not here? Don't you love me anymore? Have you found other Bakunawas who are prettier than me? But yeah, welcome everyone. I was just about to end, but I guess we're not ending yet because y'all are here and I want to talk to you. What were you streaming, Ariane? What were you streaming? Did you have fun? Because here I was basically molding the whole time because I was talking about the things that Emilio Aguinaldo did, not just to Andres Bonifacio, but the Katipunan and the entire revolution and the entire country. Basically, TLDR, fuck that guy. I hope he's rolling in his grave right now. Oh, Stardew Valley. I've always wanted to try it, but I'm kind of scared because it kind of reminds me of Minecraft. And if you know me, like if you've seen me in Minecraft, like Mori has, I have no self control. I would play it until like 5 a.m. Not good for me. You're an Aswang's relative? Interesting. You're here to date all the bachelors? I think you will find a lot in my chat. A lot of them are probably bachelors because they're here with me. Anyway, I'm glad that you're all here. Oh, I thought that you meant that in general. But like, even if it's like in general, I respect that. I respect the hustle, babe. In Stardew, you can date all of them? You know what? Who needs maidens? They have me, a Bakunawa, who will talk about history and tell them that Aguinaldo, bad. Aguinaldo, a little bitch. A rat. Colonizers, bad. Oh, you're in senior high school, very young. I'm technically a hag, like very, very old. I'm a millennial. Like, I've lived for a millennium. I can feel my bones aching whenever I hear that VTubers are in high school, and I'm like, oh my god, I could have like, if I were like a practitioner of heterosexuality at a young age, I would have had a child this big by now. Like, yes, I'm that old. Oh yeah, Rizal, definitely a fuckboy. He has a way with words. Like, I keep on saying that I really doubt that he was fluent in all those languages. My theory is that he just knew, like, maybe a few languages well, and then the rest, he only studied enough so that he can get the ladies. I'm having a big brain moment here. Yeah, like I can also shape shift, but not right now. As you can see, they have trapped my body underneath a mountain. And I've been crying ever since. No, literally, my dragon body is crying, and that's how the Bakunawa bath water is formed. And with the magic of the bath water, I hope to someday, yes, someday, I will regain my original form, and I'm shape shifting slowly. That's why now I have horns. Back then, when I possessed this body, I looked like an ordinary human, but now I have these horns and I have these eyes. Not Halia. Well, it the Halia thing again, a big misunderstanding. We weren't fighting. We were trying to court each other. It was just like, playground flirting. That's why they thought we were fighting. It was the Babaylans. They were the ones who sealed me under a mountain and then trapped my soul in this mortal body. Well, it's not mortal anymore because I regularly bathe in my Bakunawa bath water, and my soul is more powerful than the human that resided here a long, long time ago. No, not the Manananggal, although the Manananggal is quite hot too. Hi, hello, Halia, if you're out there listening to my VOD someday in the future. Yes, I do say that a lot. You're hot. And I bet she knows that because I'm always in her streams. I'm always claiming the Mwamwa reveal. I mean, redeem. The Babaylans. Technically, this body of mine belonged to a Baybaylan girl, and they were doing this cute little experiment of theirs where they're like, oh, what if we trap the Bakunawa inside the body of this Babaylan so she can have better fortune-telling powers? Idiots. Now I own this body. Oh, I will be at Halia's stream on Friday because it's her birthday stream, and all of us, well, most of us in the Balangay would be there with her celebrating by playing cacology games. Yeah, we're doing a quiz thingy on Friday. You're in luck. I'll be there, hopefully, if I don't get cut off from electricity or internet, because sometimes that happens. But as long as I am connected, I'll be there. You're gonna hear my voice. We're gonna answer some quizzes with Halia, the Manananggal, not the goddess. Oh, thank you. I've actually, my lore came first before my design or whatever plans I have because I have been planning to stream for a long time before I actually started. Like, how many Niji Sanji auditions have I let pass by? Because I was like, no, I don't have any content to show. No, I'm not ready. I don't have the proper equipment. But yeah, long story short, I just went ahead and dove in. Lore writing is very, very fun. I think some, if not all of the people who are here are aware that I've written my lore 1 year prior to starting VTubing because immediately I knew that I had to be a Bakunawa. Immediately I knew that my lore was like a Bakunawa trapped inside a human body of the Oracle. And then I had doubts because this is quite an expensive hobby. I've been throwing a lot of money on it. So in the beginning, I didn't think I will push through. So I just used that backstory to write basically roleplay. I roleplayed in Twitter. Like, I'm not going to tell you the fandom, but like, if you follow me in my social media, there are only a few fandoms that you would suspect that you're bound to be right, at least, on one of them. And yeah, I roleplayed with this lore, so I had it fleshed out quite to a certain degree. I still had to tweak it when I went back to my idea of VTubing though, because a lot of things happened during that role-playing thing that I didn't really originally plan. So yeah, here I am now. But I'm still planning to actually write it officially, and if I do, I will let you know. I will distribute it to all of you so that you can read and you can see my writing, because I think I have a story to tell. Anyways, that would be all for tonight because I've been holding you all hostage for quite a while now. It's way past 12. And let's see, who am I going to? Who am I going to raid again? Is Pentel still on? Oh no, Pentel is about to end stream. Let me quickly find someone else to raid. Let's see. Okay, let's see. Is Nana still on? I'm gonna raid Nanasu even if I'm very, very shy, okay? Hiro? As in Hiro Dadayo? Okay, here's the thing. I think Hiro is a great guy, but I have been traumatized the last time I tried to raid him. So I'm like, I might not be able to raid him again because I'm scared. What if he's drunk again? What if, it's a scary story again? Because the last time I went to his stream for a raid, he was like really, really drunk, and I thought he was going to, fall off his chair, bump his head, and I heard bottles crashing, and I was like very worried. Anyway, let's try to raid Nanasu. And she's playing Red Dead Redemption. We are raiding her in like 10 minutes. But yes, I'll see you when I see you on Friday on Halia stream. But until then, au revoir, adios, annyeong, zaijian, sayonara, sampay chumpa, paalam, aking mga minamahal. Baby, bye-bye!
Mwah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Oh my
Thank you so